Hey guys, today we're going to be taking a look at the problem of hiddenness. In my opinion, this is probably the best argument that atheism has to offer. And this form of the argument was presented by one of my favorite YouTubers, Way of the Bastard. I'll put his channel info and his video in the more info section. If you're at all interested in this whole atheist versus theist debate, then I definitely recommend you subscribe to his channel. Alright, this argument's been addressed in several different ways, and I'm going to take what I think to be a new approach. I'll put his syllogism in the more info section, but it's a little bit complicated, so we'll summarize it here.
Alright, I know that you're a Christian, but for a moment let's assume that there's a perfectly all-loving God and that you're an atheist.
Alright.
Are you capable of having a relationship with God?
Yes.
Have you freely shut yourself off from God?
No.
Alright, then whether you actually choose to or not, you're in a position to have a relationship with God if you try.
Alright, that sounds good.
And by the way, no one can actually have a relationship with God without believing that God exists. So, if an all-loving God exists, you believe in God.
But I'm playing an atheist. I don't believe in God.
If you're capable of believing in God, you did not freely reject Him, and you do not at least believe that God exists, then God is hidden. That means God either does not exist, or He is not all-loving.
Okay, let's assume this argument for atheism is true. What do you think the world should be like in order to make this argument false?
Well, perhaps God would appear to me and talk to me to prove that He exists.
Alright, let's assume that He does appear to you. Even if in that hypothetical world, the problem of hiddenness could still be presented. See, everyone has their own standards of evidence. Someone could disbelieve in God because they wouldn't find God's appearance to them to be persuasive evidence. Take a look.
If by some chance God suddenly revealed Himself to me and came down from the heavens and poof, God, that would convince me. But really, upon further reflection, I realized that no, it wouldn't convince me.
What if God would appear to people multiple times, so that all people would be convinced that God existed?
Well, that wouldn't work either. Some people would require more proof.
If I saw God, if God came to me, I would probably think, for one night or something like that, in a dream or something, I would probably just think that was a weird dream, or that I was severely deluded. If it happened to me on a regular basis, then I would probably think I was crazy.
Perhaps everyone would believe if God paid them a personal visit and left behind some tangible evidence.
Well, you might be surprised.
It would have to be something that was so epic that happened to hundreds, if not thousands of people. I mean, I'm talking about Jesus coming down from heaven, riding on a motorcycle, flying around the earth 777 times, and then throwing cases of cash out to some of the poorest slums around the world.
I wonder if he would believe if Jesus only did it 776 times. Well, alright, I can play some videos too. What about this?
You're talking with Jesus, supposedly has a lifeline, the creator of this entire universe. How about you tell me the united theory of physics? I mean, you're talking to God every day, right? Come on. Try and get some evidence, because that's the thing you really need.
Why should God have to do that? I mean, God is not obligated to appeal to others' often outlandish standards of evidence. The reason people desire such fantastic miracles in the first place is because they have different standards of evidence. If He did exist, why should we expect Him to provide anything more than a reasonable standard of evidence? Also, why should we expect that we would currently know about that standard? Ironically, even if God did that amazing miracle, then everyone would still not believe in Him, which would mean that some people would still use the problem of hiddenness as an argument.
But surely there's something God can do which would make everyone believe. I mean, after all, He is omnipotent.
Well, actually, there is.
Again, it seems to me that the only way I could believe in a God is if such a God made me believe in them.
So, no evidence for God is sufficient. God would literally have to force people to believe. His statement proves that even if God met every last standard of evidence, some people would still not believe. God could be the polar opposite of hidden, and people would still be using the problem of hiddenness. Doesn't that raise a few eyebrows to anyone? If this hypothetical world involves both the existence of an all-living God and the problem of hiddenness, then the problem of hiddenness cannot be used to disprove the existence of God. The only way everyone would believe is if God forced them to do so. And this is not what an all-loving God would do. If you still have your doubts, let's take a closer look at premise 4.
Alright. It states that it is not the case that all creatures who have not freely shut themselves off from God believe that God exists. Therefore, God is hidden.
This argument is ambiguous in the sense that it fails to account for time. Just because people currently don't believe in God does not mean that they never will. The fact that people don't currently believe in God certainly doesn't prove that God doesn't exist. Do you know what the passages Deuteronomy 4:29, Jeremiah 29:13, Matthew 7:7, and Luke 11:9 have in common?
Yeah, they all say that seek and you will find.
If that was repeated so many times, it seems like it might be important.
Look, I would believe in God. You might even say that I would want to believe in God, but I just don't see any evidence.
Well, if you wanted to find a job, what would you do?
Obviously, I would go job searching.
Well, when it comes to Christianity, if you really want to have a relationship with God, why does God have to be the one to put in all the effort? I mean, shouldn't you do some searching? The Bible tells us to test everything and hold on to the good, and it also tells us to study to show ourselves approved unto God. This goes back to that reasonable standard of evidence idea. God created us with free will, and as such, He doesn't force us to believe anything. How do you expect to find God if you never seek after Him?
But there's just not enough evidence.
Remember, people will make that claim no matter how much evidence there is for God.
We don't live in one of these hypothetical worlds. The evidence for God in this world is scarce, if there is even any at all.
I think the evidence is quite abundant. So abundant, in fact, that people who are not told of God's existence are able to come to that conclusion on their own. Ironically, this is not an argument I came up with, but an argument I saw presented on the atheist Richard Dawkins' official YouTube page. It's about an hour-long video, so I'll play some relevant clips here and put a link to the full video if you want to watch that.
Why did my mind, why did your mind, why did our minds generate religious ideas, religious beliefs, and accept them? Why? And what I hope to show you this morning is the answer to those questions. We're getting tantalizingly close to a comprehensive cognitive neuroscience of religious belief. Religious ideas, religious beliefs, are just the extraordinary use of everyday cognitions, everyday adaptations, social cognitions, agency detection, precautionary reasoning. It's called intuitive reasoning, and it underlines the essence of religious ideas. Belief in some life separate from what is actually experienced in the body is the default setting of the human mind. Children will spontaneously invent the concept of God. What you start to see are these mechanisms that we're born with make us all very vulnerable to religious ideas.
Not only do humans have a strong natural tendency to infer the existence of God, but there are also several deductive arguments to demonstrate His existence. Some of my favorites are the moral argument, the kalam argument, and the teleological argument. I have spent a significant chunk of time making videos about the moral argument, tried to be as thorough as I can, and I have many more videos to come on that in the future. If you are really seeking, I recommend you take a look. So let's go back to that statement, if you seek, then you will find. I don't think there are people who genuinely seek and don't find. It may be the case that you are seeking and haven't found, but I would say that you just haven't found yet. The thing which is not accounted for is time. If you are seeking, then you will find, and maybe I could help. That would be cool. So remember, God loves you, and so do I. I mean, shouldn't you go do some searching? The Bible tells us.
Dang it.
Darn it! Why'd I look at you? I was like, your turn, and you were like, oh crap! Okie dokie. Where are we now? Oh, so closer look at premise 4. You know what, let's just cut it.
Yeah.